Hey kitten. Daddy's home.
Hey, everyone. Today, I want to try something new, a video essay. But, if I'm being completely honest, I don't feel like speaking a lot right now, so I'll just let my physical self do all the heavy lifting while I play Minecraft. Take it away, Mike Roth.
So, where am I sparking? Is that the trigger? Oh, okay. There's a trend I've been noticing in the media landscape recently. I'm talking about the serialization of movies and anti-serialization of shows. This is something I'm sure you noticed, even if you haven't had a name for it, and I think it reflects a broader trend in the whole art industry. So if you allow me to explain, I think we should start with the word that I didn't make up. Ugh. Serialization is a form of media where a story goes out in standardized increments over a scheduled or unscheduled period of time.
Now, serialized media originates in the 1600s with handwritten epics.
But it has survived throughout history with stage plays, operas, radio shows, comic books, podcasts, and games as a service. However, the one you're probably thinking of is TV shows. Specifically, the classic ones, soap operas, come to mind as the crown of jewel of serialization. But the serialization-esque shows that lasting for about a human lifespan. It stayed around for so long because it works. Keeping the flow of content at a steady drip keeps people coming back for more. And if you keep the cast and characters the same while changing the storylines, you can effectively stay in the sweet spot of familiarity and novelty forever. I've even done this when I make a song every day for a month. It kept the general story of me improving at music production while providing a new song to chew on. Since it's so effective at building and maintaining an audience, serialization is, in my opinion, the form art takes as a business. Not saying that all art made for profit is serialized or vice versa, but if you make content for a job, it benefits you to serialize. But what if you don't care about money?
Alright, I won't do absolutely nothing. I'll cover anti-serialization since I'm the one who coined the term. So, anti-serialization, as defined for this discussion, refers to media with a self-contained beginning and end. There are no strict divisions between issues, sequels, or versions. For every comic book series that spans thousands of issues, there are stories that span a dozen pages. For every billion-dollar live service game with weekly updates, there is an indie visual novel. For every TV show, there is a movie. Movies, in particular, epitomize anti-serialization because their structure inherently resists serial continuity. A standard film has roughly 90 minutes to deliver a complete narrative, with often no message to the audience to return for additional installments. If there's more story left to tell afterward, then those loose threads should have been woven during the runtime. Once the movie is released, anyone can purchase it on physical media, confident that the story they experience will remain unchanged from its premiere to its eventual obsolescence. This is why some of the most celebrated modern masterpieces are films. Directors like the Wachowski sisters, Peele, Wiseau, and Kubrick produce works that are largely anti-serial, and that's a significant reason for their acclaim. Crafting a compelling narrative in a format that doesn't permit revisions requires a distinctive level of skill. Okay, I'm going back to doing nothing now.
Of course, art hates nothing if not hard lines between concepts. So it comes a movie franchise where several movies are tied together by the same branding, a sort of semi-serial form of media. Even with the list of directors I just mentioned, there are exceptions. The Wachowski sisters, how do you spell that, have made 2 follow-ups to their so-called anti-serial story. And they were good, however, there are still differences between the franchise and the TV show. First and most importantly, a movie franchise is more like a really long movie. If the writing staff is competent, the arcs that characters go through won't be reset, but they will instead go through new arcs. So watching the franchise continuously, you'll need a constant upward trend. With TV shows, you might see that, but many shows are status quo shows where everything ends up the same at the end. The Simpsons is famous for only having changed at least a select few meaningful things in the 3 decades they've been on. Even then, it is generally poorly received and ends up softly retconned. On another note, most serial and semi-serial franchises that are based on semi-serial books have the express goal of putting out what is on paper on the screen. So when there's no more books, there will be no more movies. It would be insane for a movie studio to go rogue at the end of a franchise and start making up books and making movies out of. The TV shows, however, this is different. Orange is the New Black is based on a single book and it's a memoir. Most of the stuff in the book actually happened, but with the show they made 7 seasons, they can't even get 7 seasons out of 300 pages. So they made up stuff, followed other characters, did what they had to do, stretch a single year into 6 years. And they kept the show good all the way through.
Well, maintaining quality wasn't easy. There was no predefined path to follow, they had to carve one out as they went, and success was far from guaranteed. For Game of Thrones, one of the most successful semi-serial series of all time, the roadmap, the books, ran out. George R.R. Martin didn't complete the books before the showrunners had to conclude the series, and what the writers went with instead didn't satisfy fans. This caused a significant hit to the final season's ratings, the rewatchability of the show as a whole, and lots of revenue for HBO. There were, of course, other factors contributing to the final season's failure, but all were tied to the show's lengthy run. Because of how big their ambitions were, the failure that followed was spectacular. Any long-running high-budget TV series risks a similarly disastrous and expensive fate. The obvious solution? Make less show. When making a movie, your story could be told within 2 hours or 2 days. However, your budget is finite, and every additional minute of runtime increases costs across the board. This creates a built-in economic incentive to streamline, trimming away anything deemed unnecessary. There's also a social incentive: audiences will criticize irrelevant fluff, and they'll stop watching. For certain TV shows, this constraint hasn't applied. Loyal viewers would tune in every week because they'd already invested in the previous 20 seasons, so regardless of quality they'll watch what happens next. For newer, unproven shows, however, the stakes are different. If you're a new showrunner trying to establish a property, you don't have a core audience. You need to attract new fans, and they'll abandon your show much faster if they get bored. This forces you to deliver tighter, more engaging content from the outset. Once you've survived a few seasons and built a dedicated fan base, however, you can afford to slow the pace, like the soap operas of old. But for the next showrunner stepping into the industry, the pressure is even greater. Faster, more thoughtful pacing has become the norm, so creators have to constantly push the envelope to hook new viewers, at least until they build up that core fan base.
Well, what if you plan from the beginning to make however few seasons? If the studio agrees, then they'll probably be happy to let you put more time into each episode, cut it down, and the story told without any danger of drastic changes, messing things up. If you can get this arranged with a large studio behind you, then you have a lot of money to spend on each episode. Each episode starts to have a level of storytelling and cinematography unimaginable to the crew of a soap opera. So your TV show becomes more like a series of movies connected by the same story. The TV show is more like a movie franchise. This is what I like to call a movie TV show, although it's been called a miniseries or a special, whatever you call it. It's defined as a high budget that shapes the entire culture of media consumption. This is the TV show format becoming anti-serialized. In a TV show movie with its high budgets and planned endings, this is the enemy of profits. So TV shows that go on forever remain. And movie franchises remain. And movie franchises don't have to end. What if we kept going? Marvel back.
Marvel Studios released the first movie in the Avengers franchise in 2008 to critical praise and massive success.
It was a self-contained story that, granted, had ended with the potential for more story, nevertheless still ended. If they never made another movie, it would have been praised as a classic. Of course they didn't do that. They continued releasing movies to higher and higher praise until Infinity War and Endgame put a cap on the larger narrative that was being told. The villain died and so did the hero, and there wasn't really much left to do. At this point, everyone could have gone home, and would have been done with Marvel. But there were still fans to please and still money to be made, and you can't give up this kind of money. So they moved on to a new storyline, new people, all under the Marvel franchise. Currently, we're about halfway through this new storyline, but there's no guarantee it'll be the last one. Of course, public opinion is soaring and profits are stagnating, so I'm sure they'll stop eventually. But that's due to the public's reaction. They stayed positive about Marvel and kept buying. Who knows how many Marvel movies would have been made? Guiding Light lasted from the 1930s to 2009. Will Marvel movies last from 2008 to 2080? They could if the profits remained. Marvel is the biggest example of what I like to call TV show movies. The inverse of a movie TV show, where they, instead of a TV show becoming more like a series of movies becoming more like a TV show. And it sucks. Anti-serialization is story over profit. Serialization is profits over story. And in our world where money keeps studios alive, the profits will win. If the studio owns the property, they can do whatever they want. So say they have a successful movie TV show and they want to squeeze more money out of it. No matter how condensed the story is, there can always be more. Then maybe a second season comes around and spin-off and tie-in and whatever. The serialization comes creeping back in. A movie TV show can, and many will, decay back into TV. This is the studio thinking it can have it both ways with the massive cultural impact of the movie and the massive profits of the movie TV show, but they can't. The audience built on a movie TV show will sour much quicker to serialization than regular TV shows. I love movie and TV shows, but as long as entertainment remains primarily a business, TV shows are the default state for TV shows and movies. And for everything else too. The biggest video games aren't the indie games, they're the live action service games. The dominant form of music isn't the album, it's the viral single. We're going through a historic reign of serialization, but the pendulum is swinging back. People are getting tired of TV. It's inherently unsatisfying, which isn't good in the long term, and when the story isn't put at first, it creates a sort of decay in the quality. The movie still exists for those who know where to look.
And with how advanced creative technologies are getting, no, not you.
It's easier and easier to forgo the studio and make things on your own. Even if it has no end, you're putting the story first. It doesn't matter. Make whatever you want. You can even get paid for it. It makes your art better. Great. As long as the goal is to tell a story and not to make money. That is how the story dies.
Wow. Such thoughtful commentary. With that, I'm gonna go to sleep mode. See ya in the next one.